Are you overwhelmed with how much work you have to do on your island? Is the thought of those picture-perfect islands putting you off finishing your island? Then this is the video for you. With there being so many islands in different styles and looks, it can be hard to not start comparing what you've done so far to another creator's finished island. As difficult as designing an island may seem when you first start trying to do so, it's honestly not as hard as you think. And with these 3 tips, you can make every island of yours stand out amongst the crowd. Planning an island can be done in a lot of different ways, and when it comes to trying to make an island come together, everyone seems to have a different opinion on what you need to do first to make a build come together. When you look at a load of blank space on your island, you may end up feeling like you just can't start with it and like it's too big. Believe me, everyone has felt like that at some point. One tip that I use to help my builds come together is to decorate in stages. It's so easy to become overwhelmed with putting together a large project that you may easily end up forgetting to plan a pathway for you or your visitors to walk around and enjoy the island you've made. So by planning each part of your build in stages, you can then see if you have enough space for everything you want to do. The stages I use to help make a build come together are to first mark out where the shops or villager homes are going using the in-game path, if they're forming part of a build. Once I've moved those buildings into place, I then plant the trees I want around the build and double check that I've stunted the shorter trees so they don't end up accidentally growing on me. Then I do my pathing so that I can snake it around the trees and double check there's plenty of space for my villagers and Dream Address visitors to move around before then moving on to decorating the space. When you think of island design, it's quite common to just think about decorating and placing items down to tell the story behind your island, but there's so much more planning which goes into island design than you may realise, and if you don't take the time to plan out the build before you get stuck into it, you may find that the building process takes longer than you want it to. Planning out where buildings are going is fairly straightforward because each one is a set size, so once you've mapped on the ground where it's going, you don't necessarily need to worry about how much space it's going to take up. However, when it comes to everything else in island design, it's a little bit more fluid than that. This is why I would recommend that once you know where a building is going, you plant trees next, because although each fully grown tree, flower or bush takes up 1 tile each, if you're using stunted trees, you need to leave 2 tiles. When you're using a lot of stunted trees as part of your build, you may find that you don't have as much space for decorating or paths as you would have liked. So working with trees first allows you the opportunity to double check that you have your spacing right before you get fully stuck into decorating your build and plotting out the paths you need for the villagers or Dream Address visitors to use. When you decorate in stages, you may find that it helps keep you motivated to continue a build, and as you slowly add down each part you're working on, you'll see everything come together, which will then keep you inspired and motivated to continue working on your island. I know I just spent a lot of time talking about the bigger builds, but it's not just those which make up your island. This may be a bit of an out there theory, but when I think of the different types of builds in Animal Crossing New Horizons, I see them in different camps. You have your bigger builds which may be grandiose structures or involve large amounts of terraforming to make a lake or a valley on your island. These typically tell the story behind your theme and make it clear which direction you've gone in when it comes to the final Dream Address. Then you have the smaller builds, which may be a villager garden or a small amount of space left over from working on another build, which you walk past as you transition between larger builds. These smaller builds are the ones which enhance your theme, and if you get these smaller builds right, they can really make the difference between creating a good island and an amazing island. Depending on how much space you have to work with, you may just end up needing a couple of items to fill out a walkway, or maybe you need a few extra items to add some atmosphere into your island. Unlike the larger builds, you won't need to plan these out in a huge amount of detail. You probably have some items left over in your storage from where you did your last build, which you can use to fill the empty space on your island. What counts as a smaller build? Think of something small like a sitting area, which you can make with just a bench and maybe a book or a magazine to add in some dimension into your island. Anything which can just fill a small space easily without making your island look too cramped that doesn't need a ton of extra planning or treasure island runs to fill. I'm actually working on a video for small and easy builds you can make on your island, and if that video is out by the time this one is released, I'll link it in the cards for you. But if it isn't and you want to see those builds when they do go live, please do consider subscribing so that you see it as soon as it becomes available. The final tip I have for you that I would always recommend to island designers, whether you're new to doing it or not, is to use layers. Layering is so important in creating a New Horizons island, as you can add so many unique touches and details just from using different types of layers. When I say this, I don't just mean using custom codes under items, although that also features into this. Layering can also be used in a vertical sense as well. If you're using items of different heights in a build, it makes it look more visually interesting, and depending on the items you use, you can actually make a build look more realistic when working with the grid system we have in Animal Crossing. Items like the simple panels, fences, and climbing walls are as tall as they come, but if you place these behind items that are that bit smaller, you'll add depth into your build. The easiest way to create your layers is to start from the back of the build and work your way forwards. By doing this, you can add a few items down that you want to use, walk away from it to check your perspective, and then add items in front of it on a different angle to break up the monotony of having just one single item on its own. Work your way slowly down the levels until you're happy with what you have. You can always add and take items away until you get something that looks as close to what you imagined it to be. But if you're using items that are that little bit too low, take a look and see if they can be placed on something else to raise the height. Normally, any item which is in your miscellaneous tab in your storage can be placed on a stool or a pillar to raise it up that bit more, so you don't have a jarring contrast between different heights. The added benefit of using items to increase the height of others is that they also count towards your development points. So if you're working your way towards a 3 or a 5-star island, it's worth adding some of these in. The other thing to factor in when you're using layers is that if you use different types of items, you add a bit of texture into your build. A bush on its own is a great way for creating an edge or a finish to your build, but if you want to add more details into what you're working on, you could always try adding down a fence in front of the bush and a flower bed in front of that, so you create a build which fits more seamlessly into the natural surroundings you have on your island. How you use layers ultimately comes down to how you're planning to design your space, and some items can easily be hidden behind others when you're trying to create height or dimension in a build. Think about how different items are going to add details into your build, and I promise you, as you practice and play around with different items you like, you will create a stunning island which will be up there amongst other designers. Designing islands is something that is a lot of fun to do, and once you get over the fear of making something perfect and start playing around with designing, you'll quickly become a professional decorator. When you do begin to decorate an island, you'll want to make sure that it's right and is something you're proud of when you showcase your dream address to others. If you want to make the process easier and not make a mistake on your next island, watch this video next where I went through some of the pitfalls everyone makes when designing an island, and I'll see you over there.